once again, hello and welcome back to the channel. As I've said before, since making the script, a new trailer for the show has come out, so that will likely not be included in this discussion. Anyway, thank you for watching, and please enjoy the video. Okay, so Claudia doesn't show up in Season 5 as much as I had admittedly hoped she would, to the point where almost all of my predictions for that season turned out to be either wrong or I was just too early, because they were so Claudia-focused. And I pride myself on being very good at predicting where stories are going to go. Heck, most of my predictions for Season 4 and 6 were correct. That was around the time I started theorizing. I even predicted in the first few seasons that Soren would be redeemed and Claudia would fall deeper into villainy. Season 5 was kind of a huge letdown on my part, but I ain't infallible. So, what actually happens in Season 5? First off, we have to talk about Viren. After using dark magic for the first time since his resurrection, Viren is placed into a coma. Claudia is understandably a bit snippy to her boyfriend who is trying to help her spirits, but she is too concerned for her father. He does end up making her feel better, and it's adorable. However, what's actually relevant here are the dreams that Viren is having in his coma. Viren reflects on his life as his subconscious teaches him just how corrupt he's been because of the influence of dark magic. We see a vision of Viren almost losing Soren to sickness and being so desperate to save him that he uses dark magic. But when Soren is better, he suddenly sees Viren as a monster and runs away. This very cleverly reflects on stuff that has happened in his relationship with his son. But what's even more relevant is what he sees about Claudia. He walks towards the ocean, making footsteps in the sand. He looks back to see Claudia following him, literally in his footsteps, going past him and seemingly drowning in the ocean. Back in the material world, Ezran has asked a bunch of dragons to help them find Viren. So Claudia and Terry suddenly notice that one of those dragons has been stalking them. They get tired of running from it, so Claudia decides to face it. The fight quickly goes Claudia's way, as she uses dark magic to nearly kill the dragon, taking sadistic glee in watching it struggle. Terry stops her, worried that she is taking it too far, and claims she doesn't need to kill it. Claudia agrees and lets it go, not because she believes it to be wrong, but because she realizes that the dragon is afraid of her, and she lets it go so it can fly away. As Claudia, Terry, and Sir Sparklepuff get Viren's comatose body to where Erebos' prison is supposed to be, it is the last night of the 30 days that Viren has to live. Realizing the prison is underwater, Claudia uses a dark magic spell involving an ink vial around her neck to go full Ursula and sprout tentacles. She can now breathe underwater, and she dives down just as Viren wakes up. As Claudia gets down to where the prison is supposed to be, she finds Callum and Ezran, both of whom have also figured it out and are there to try and stop her from freeing Erebos. Claudia is at first very kind, appealing to their friendship. She admits to them that she has done horrible things, but she implores them that if there was a way that the boys could save their father, that she would help them too. I will say, given her track record and beliefs, I kind of believe her. The trick is that the spell Callum used to get them there, and to breathe underwater, doesn't let them talk, so they don't have much of a reply. Damn, she really is going Ursula. It soon becomes clear to Claudia that Ezran knows where the prison is exactly, and won't tell her. This causes Claudia to fly into a rage and attack him. Callum defends his brother, but is struggling against the tentacles. However, the fight turns around when Rayla arrives. Rayla manages to slice off one of the tentacles, and Callum manages to remove the vial, keeping Claudia's spell active, so she is forced to retreat. When Claudia gets back to Terry, Terry realizes that her human leg has been severed. Even more messed up, while this was happening, Viren was learning from Erebos exactly what he had to do to make sure he survived. He had to use the blood of his child. But Erebos knows he'd refuse to hurt Claudia or Soren, so he created a homunculus, with the DNA of both Viren and Erebos to be used as a sacrifice. AKA Sir Sparklepuff. Told you it was important! All Viren has to do is kill Sir Sparklepuff and use his body for the ritual, to bring himself back to life. But Viren can't go through with it. He yells at Erebos, renouncing him and renouncing dark magic, and he goes off into the woods to await his death. That is where Season 6 starts. Terry finds Viren the next morning, as he wakes up alive. Who'd have thought? Viren believes that Erebos had lied to him about the ritual and goes to happily tell Claudia, but what he finds is unpleasant. We learn that Claudia committed the crime Viren was unable to. She murdered Sir Sparklepuff and used the ritual to ensure Viren survived. Viren is, however, horrified that his daughter had sacrificed so much for him, and that she had become so vile by following his lead. He tries to plead with her to see reason, but she doesn't listen. Realizing how far he has gone, Viren resolves to go back to Katalis, take whatever penance he can get. But Claudia screams at him, furious that he'd sacrificed all they fought for, that he renounced dark magic, and that she believes he owes her his life. Viren leaves, hoping that doing so will give Claudia a chance at redemption. Later that night, after having a crisis about everyone in her life leaving her, Claudia leaves Terry behind so he can't do it to her either. Terry, however, waits at the beach for her, still desperately in love. He waits there for a day until Claudia does make it back, worn and tattered. Terry helps her recover and even makes her a prosthetic leg. We then find Claudia sometime later reflecting on her use of dark magic, just as her father had. Clearly, so many things she believed in have just crumbled right before her eyes, so she's starting to question herself. She tells Terry how she looks at this cute magical creature, and she's haunted by the fact that all she can see are components for spells. She swears she will not use dark magic until she figures everything out, and they decide to follow Viren to Katalis. However, before they make it, Katalis is attacked by the sun dragon, Sol Regum, and Viren, who had been in the dungeons since his arrival, serving a sentence and attempting to make amends with his son, sacrifices himself to save the people of the kingdom. Claudia and Terry arrive at the scene to find Katalis empty, except for the dead body of Viren, crushed by fallen debris. This is where Erebos appears to Claudia again, telling her how he has the ability to be freed from his prison, but Claudia has to do a magic ritual for him. An important detail I need to make to rebut some theories out there. Some people say that this is Claudia going back on her desire to not use dark magic, but this spell that she uses is not dark magic. The verbal components of dark magic spells are in English, but spoken backwards. Meanwhile, primal spells are said in Latin. The verbal components of her spell were said in Latin. When Claudia's first attempt at casting the spell fails, Erebos explains to her that the spell needs to be cast with love in mind. To inspire her, he tells her his backstory. Erebos, as a star-touched elf, is immortal, and therefore they are basically like godlike entities. But unlike other star-touched elves, Erebos and his daughter Leola lived among the humans. That was until the other star-touched elves found out about the fact that Leola granted humans primal magic. And if you remember, primal magic is not supposed to be learned by humans. So Leola was brought before a court of star-touched elves, and she was found guilty of this as a crime, and the sentence was death. Of course, Erebos protested his young child being executed for such a crime, but all they offered him was a chance for him to die with her, which was refused, and now it seems as though Erebos is trying to honor his daughter's memory. Hearing this, Claudia finds herself ready to cast the spell using love, and remembering the love she has for her father. However, Terry speaks up, telling Claudia that while it seems as though Erebos' story started off as a story about love, that it seemed to get twisted, that what Erebos is really after is revenge. Claudia, however, believes that Erebos is doing what is necessary. This time, when she casts the spell, it works, and Erebos is freed. And that leads us into the final season, and where we are now. Okay, so now I want to discuss the opportunity of Claudia's redemption arc. So, for this analysis, I am going to use a method I learned from the channel Hello Future Me. in the On Writing series. I highly recommend it if you like checking out in-depth analysis of stories and how to write fiction. It's a good channel. I highly recommend it. What we will use is the Redemption Arc Trifecta. Give a brief explanation for my speculation purposes. They consist of 3 ends. What the character thinks is at stake for them, their view of themselves, and their view of the world/others. In a redemption arc, the way the character was acting before will become incompatible with how these 3 things change. So, let's discuss these in detail for Claudia. First off, stakes. As previously stated, a lot of the villainous deeds that Claudia commits throughout the story are for those she loves. She and Viren often say they will protect their family, however dangerous, however vile. This mantra is used by them frequently, often to justify their own actions. That no matter what heinous things they do, it's always for those they care about. Especially in Season 4 and 5, Claudia does whatever she does because she desperately wants her father to live. And since Erebos is helping her do that, she also wants to assist him. That is her drive, to save her father and set Erebos free. The next would be her view of herself. Her use of dark magic and other heinous actions are justified. Claudia believes that dark magic is a tool that she can use to her own ends, something that she can control. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate because dark magic is not all bad. It does use the magic of magical creatures to fuel it, but that isn't much different than hunting. Arguably, it's more humane, because they at least use what they harvest and don't let it go to waste. Plus, if used responsibly, it has been shown to save lives. A fact Claudia knows very well because her brother was saved by it twice. However, what it also does is it begins to corrupt your mind and thoughts. It's a flawed logic since she has isolated her old friends and even her brother due to a lot of her own actions, but it's logic that hasn't really been tested until recently. This actually leads quite well to her view of the world. The elves and dragons have persecuted humans for centuries. Now, this is an interesting one because, unlike her view of herself, this one is actually true. But this becomes a problem when, unlike other characters, she refuses to forgive them for their past misdeeds. It's been a long time since the genocide of humans, and thanks to the efforts of Prince Callum, King Ezran, Rayla, and her own brother, Soren, humans and Exadia are beginning to see eye to eye and live together peacefully. For what seems like the first time in centuries, they're getting along well. But yet, it did all happen. Claudia is a dark mage, proudly using a type of magic that is still shunned by Exadia. Heck, consider that Rayla herself was mad even when Callum used dark magic to be heroic. The only elf we've seen without any immediate disdain for the practice is Terry, likely a reason Claudia is able to be in love with him. So this leads Claudia into a cycle where the elves are the reason her father needs to be brought back to life, they shun her people for her magic, and her magic is also how she protects her family. But that cycle has recently begun to break. Claudia hits her lowest point at the beginning of Season 5 after saving Viren. However, he's appalled at what she has done. This breaks her, and it effectively does 2 things to this cycle. First off, her desire to free Erebos is put on pause. Claudia seems to acknowledge that she does want to help him because he was true to his word about bringing Viren back, but since Viren has left, she's dealing with her own mental state first. So, now she is left without a stake. Secondly, it puts her view of herself into question. While leaving, Viren denounces dark magic, saying it has brought him and his daughter down a dark path that he can no longer travel. And while Claudia has a freakout over it, after reflecting, she realizes that he did seem oddly freed by that revelation, so she decides to not use dark magic until she has figured herself out, and so far, she's kept true to her word. But that still does leave one last avenue for Erebos to play at: her view of the world. One that Erebos knows is correct and has his own personal experience with. The story of Leola is meant as a way to pull at those strings and motivate her to seek justice, giving her a new stake. Now let's talk about speculation. Finally, am I right? First off, let's address that view of herself that's left rather up in the air. while Claudia might have a new purpose, her view of herself and dark magic is still likely no longer as favorable. But there is a way that this can be rebuilt, and likely a way that will make her an even greater threat. This leads me to my first point of speculation. Claudia will learn star magic. Let's look at where we stand with the inevitable Callum versus Claudia showdown. Callum started this show as a noob with no magic experience, and Claudia started as basically an expert already. But at this point, Callum has learned 2 primal sources of magic. His main weakness, the ability for Erebos to control him, is neutralized, and while Claudia is still a very powerful mage, she still only knows dark magic, which she is hesitant to use. And on top of that, her leg is still a prosthetic that she has only just started to learn how to use. She is no longer the same threat to our adorable mage as she used to be. But there's a real opportunity for her to be the second human in centuries to learn primal magic. And let's be honest, the only one that really fits her vibe is star magic. But of course, I have more than that. It is clear, due to the incredibly striking similarities between Claudia and Erebos' daughter Riola, that he probably sees her as some kind of daughter-like figure, so it would make a crazy amount of sense for Erebos to fill the hole left by the absence of dark magic within Claudia with star magic. This would make Claudia arguably the most powerful human mage to ever exist, and as much as Erebos being freed from his prison is terrifying, don't get me wrong, being a fighter isn't really his MO. He's far more likely to let his pawns do the fighting for him. This leads us to the next point of speculation. Claudia is the main villain of the final season. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Erebos is basically a god. That is true, and he definitely seems to be the one calling the shots. And as cool as the theory of Claudia betraying Erebos to become all-powerful is, I do not believe it to be rather likely. However, Erebos does not have enough emotional weight to be the big climactic showdown. But Claudia does have it. She has it in droves. There's a literary trope in media, which, ironically for our purposes, is referred to as the dragon. This is a villain that is the right-hand man of a greater villain power-wise, but holds more narrative weight and therefore is the actual villain of the story. The classic example would be Darth Vader and the Emperor from Star Wars. The narrative weight in the climactic battle of Return of the Jedi is not based on the Emperor, but the duel between Luke and Vader. So, I expect that the climactic battle of the show will be a final mage duel between Callum and Claudia. Likely for the fate of Exadia itself. Perhaps not the continent, but perhaps the dragons and the elves. It'll be a highly personal fight with likely a dramatic conclusion. But wait, I hear you saying. Didn't you go into detail about how Claudia was going through a redemption arc? Does that mean she will fail? Well, let's just say I don't think that this forward momentum will last long. I'll go into more detail later, but do remember that she is still being manipulated by Erebos. There's one thing I brought up earlier that I want to bring back now. A clever little bit of what I am going to assume is clever foreshadowing that leads me to my next point. Earlier, I told you how Claudia killed a poor defenseless deer to bring Soren back to use of his body. Now, let me explain a scene I didn't tell you about when I explained what happened in Season 4. There was a scene as Viren and Terry walked through the woods not far from the village he used to live in. Terry gives a bit of his life story to Viren. The narrative and visuals very subtly tell us that Terry is a trans man. He explains that Tiresias was his chosen name, and then Viren compliments him by calling it a strong name. However, the analogy that Terry uses to tell Viren his story is, they always thought I was a doe. I always knew I was a buck. Now, even though I didn't catch it at first, this is not very subtle about him being trans. But I think actively comparing Terry to a deer, this is foreshadowing. I think Claudia will have an opportunity to sacrifice Terry. Yeah, I know. Dark, huh? But think about it. Erebos is playing on her hatred of Exadia, and meanwhile Terry is becoming super suspicious of him. The moment of Claudia leaving Terry in the beginning of Season 5 has a moment where it looks like she's about to attack him, even even if she doesn't, there are multiple warning signs that Terry is likely in danger this coming season. Luckily, I think Terry will be okay, thank God. Now, this prediction is a vague one. I'm unsure how it will happen, but I have a few possible ideas. It could be that this is a moment where we see Claudia unable to do it. This would be a moment of growth for her, mirroring her killing the deer earlier, or perhaps this is a low moment where she does go through with it. I think Terry might, however, escape, and likely will leave. Speaking of which, another prediction. Claudia and Terry will break up, and by that, I mean he will likely leave Claudia due to the influence of Erebos. He is incredibly loyal, but I do think we are at the point where this poor boy has seen a loving girlfriend turn into a rather toxic one. Now, let me ease the ire of shippers. I do love them together. I ship it personally, but I think the show will likely have it end just given the fact that they want a good moral. I feel like if they don't have Terry leave, it might end up sending a bad message. Is there hope for them in the future? I sure hope so, but I have to imagine they can't have it end in a toxic place, so I believe they will break up and it will drive Claudia insane. Now, how's this all gonna end? Well, first off, I do think Erebos will be defeated. Given the circumstances, it might be very narratively fitting if it were just his own actions that brought his own downfall. Just given how Erebos' plans have created the circumstances that the characters are in now, it'd be fitting to see his downfall be by his own hand. But what about Claudia? I have given you plenty of reasons to not believe that Claudia will finish her redemption arc, so I'm sure you're all expecting a tragic downfall. A fallen hero who surrenders to their fatal flaw. And I understand why a lot of people seem to speculate that to be the case. However, I'm not sure that fits the show we're watching. Now, don't get me wrong, the Dragon Prince thrives in Morally Grey, but everyone seems to assume the worst ending possible for her. That's not quite morally grey, that's pretty dark. But on the other hand, a complete redemption might be a little too late. Let's Goldilocks this, shall we? To find out what I think is going to happen, let's look at the themes of the show. The message that is being given to us. I told you about the speech Ezrin gave in Season 4, about how, even though he's angry, the true path forward is to offer peace and forgiveness. Why would this not apply to Claudia? Wouldn't she be exactly the person this message is meant for? One of the running themes is the cycle of pain and suffering that comes when you seek revenge. You hurt me, I hurt you. You killed my father, I will kill you, and then your child will kill me. You have to be brave enough to break the cycle. So with that said, here's my final prediction. When Claudia is defeated, Callum or one of the other good guys will offer her a hand of friendship and forgiveness, and she will accept. Now, this does not mean her redemption arc is over, far from it. This is merely the beginning. Something we may see if future seasons are greenlit, but she can be given a chance to seek a better life for herself, to seek redemption. And I think we will leave Claudia on a note where she is not quite content or happy, but she could at least one day make it there. Okay, so this script is nearing 20 pages long, so I think this is where I need to cut it. If you've made it to this far, thank you. I'll likely check back once the Season 7 comes out to review these predictions, so please like and subscribe. And if you'd like, you can listen to Star Marked, a series of my own making, with morally grey quandaries and twists and turns just like this show. Not as many glow toads, so I apologize, but I hope you like it anyway.